we have the man, the myth, the legend, Nolan here, Bitcoin, and are you with Bitcoin now? Are you
with Bitcoin Magazine?
Magazine
yeah. I helped them produce.
We can always start that over so that's smooth.
No problem, man. I've been with those guys because look, coming out of COVID, there weren't any events in the world, right? Bitcoin Magazine's Bitcoin 2021 was on planet Earth, the first gathering of any magnitude of human beings on the planet. And they did so unapologetically.
You're still alive.
We made it. We made it.
Sorry, that's a bit controversial there.
No.
I mean, at the time, that was a lot of controversy around that.
There was a lot of controversy, but I think we had the energy. And that's why, this show has a lot of energy. I was behind this show in the early days. I still have a tiny tip of a fingerprint on this event, and I'm happy to participate. But indeed, you're dealing with folks who are, a little more, let's say, energy literate than the average person, a little more media literate than the average person, and a little more financially literate, well, a lot more financially literate than the average person. So that's why we were able to do the event before anyone, and that's why we continue to gather in big numbers and talk about the things that we really have to solve in order to move this country and this whole planet forward, and the state of Texas forward. And Texas seems to get it.
Yeah, we try to. So I mean, Texas is we're the Lone Star State, right? So when people ask where you're from, you travel internationally. So I'm from Texas. Everybody knows that. You say, hey, I'm not going to knock any other states right now. I mean, are there any other states other than Texas? Anyway.
Well, I'll say I live in the United States and have lived in the United States, but I'm from Quebec. And I've said it many times that Quebec and Texas are like twins in some way, some weird type of brother-sister relationship. And people go, what do you mean? It's the two sub-federal states, pardon me, whose state flag is...
Divine sub-federal.
Well, a state.
Yeah.
So not the federal government. It's the only two states in either of the countries where the local flag is more popular than the federal flag.
We're able to fly the Texas flag even with the American flag. Yeah.
You don't have to.
We don't. That's what I've known. That's what I've been told from Texas. So I'm not from here originally. So it might have just been a Texan that's told me this, but. My wife's a lifelong Texan.
It looks like even other states are starting to get rid of the blue background flags, and they're starting to have movements to have their own distinct flag.
Yep.
Texas is.
So you're seeing the pride on the local level.
Pride on the local level, and just not even. I don't even think we can limit it to pride. It's the concept, something that we've forgotten, and this is really important for the Texas Blockchain Council. It's really important, I think, even when I put time into programming events. The idea that states are somehow the minor leagues to the federal government is something that came about really because I think of the world wars maybe, or whatever, some of American
national
history.
crisis.
National crises. Yeah, but before the Civil War, we used to say the United States are. We used to say that, the United States are.
Yep.
After the Civil War, it became the United States is. After World War II, it became the federal government is. You don't even hear United States. The federal, this unit, centralized system out of Washington, D.C., this construct built to win World War II that they never shut off. They just kept it running. And
once you consolidate power, like once people have power, they don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
And so then it's a series. You can bring the question about, is there an existing crisis or a crisis created or allowed to facilitate,
Well, we're seeing the tensions now, is the federal government the most energy literate? Absolutely not. No. They're pushing plans that make no sense to anyone on Wall Street, right? ESG, for example. I get the environment part and I get the social governance part, but why would you put those two things together and then impose it on Wall Street? It's madness. It's absolute lunacy. And to see that being imposed from the federal government actually forces states like Texas to exercise their sovereignty. And that's what we're seeing. People talk about a national divorce in America because of the anxiety. No way. America was already decentralized in the system of federalization that they chose. And because of that, America has options. You can A/B test stuff. One of my big laments about COVID, for example, is that we didn't use the federal model to our advantage enough. We didn't A/B
Yep.
test enough
Yep.
to see what might work somewhere, what might work somewhere else. There was a little bit of that, but there could have been a lot more. We see a bit of a division because indeed there were some states that acted some way, others that acted other ways. You know,
Texas and California are a little bit different. Texas and New York a little bit different.
A little bit different. And you know, more
we tend
and
to
more,
appreciate our freedom a little bit more down here.
Yeah,
Independence.
and it forces you to take some initiative, some personal responsibility, and that's where the financial literacy in Texas is so high. That's why the energy literacy in Texas is so high. Texans aren't going to get duped on some of these arguments about, we use too much energy. Well, it depends on where the energy comes from, what kind of energy you're using, and what the energy is being used for.
Yep.
Right? Texans have an understanding of that, and I don't think they're going to let a federal government tell them what's best. They're going to make the choices they need to make for themselves, and that's really a big part of the entire movement we're involved in, and that's why I continue to be so encouraged when I see that Texas has almost diplomatic relations with El Salvador based on the Bitcoin connection there. And I think you're going to continue to see more of that. I think you're going to get a flip. You know, I mentioned
on a state level outreach to other states.
And I just even think in awareness and organizing principles and your own identity, right? You know, Americans, like I said, it went from United States are, and then after the Civil War, it was the United States is, and then after World War II, is the federal government is. I think we're going to go back to the United States are. The United States are means the ties that bind us are important, but they offer the flexibility for sovereignty of nations, which is on the trend towards what Bitcoin is really trying to create, which is self-sovereignty, which is the ability to yourself have control and command of your own life, your own decisions. And that doesn't mean there isn't, we're living
a framework. It doesn't
it's a
mean that there's not a framework.
But
you
it's
can
an
have
organizing principle,
Yes.
right? It's where you start organizing it from. And I think Texans are closer to the sovereignty of their state, which is more personalized to them than it would be if you're thinking of this great federal behemoth that is very anonymous, very estranged from the individual, right? It is by its nature. That's why we get so many crazy results out of the federal government, because it's not a human.
Yes,
right?
it's
Only
just-
a committee can be that stupid.
It's the stupidity of crowds. You get a bunch of enough
Yes.
people in the
Yeah.
room, and
Yeah.
everyone loses 80 IQ points.
Decisions become unrecognizable to humans when they're made by groups. We can't even understand what
And
they
you've
were
got-
thinking.
and they were getting larger and larger and larger, and then you also have people trying to get elected. They're trying to retain the power, and they'll do crazy things to be able to be elected. And so we've had some interesting conversation with legislators, and they'll say behind closed doors that they want to be seen as fixing something. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said that it can all be summed up that way. They want to be seen as that. A lot of people don't want to fix that. And I think on the local level, that's where you see they're living in those communities, they're participating in those communities. That's not just some random person that's back where you used to live 20 years ago that you go back and occasionally campaign for. It's that's your sister, brother. They're living here locally. And what are you seeing on the on the state side where people are pushing harder? As far as regulation, what do you think that people are doing now? What should they do more of on a local state level?
Let me pull it back just a little bit, because I'll get into the let's say incentives or the things that motivate people to do things. I've always had a frame that Texas became what we know of as Texas because of the air conditioner. Right? Once we understood the use of power and that we could make this very hostile environment, right? We have beautiful weather today in Texas, and it's mostly beautiful weather in Texas.
It has not hit the hell zone for a few months.
But I was here last year, and it was 105 degrees before the
It was.
humidity. And I know the storms you guys get in the winters, it's not the Caribbean around here, right? You get some serious storms, and then you get the hurricanes, and then you get these major events that can happen. So Texas has long been about diverting natural resources to create energy in order to live here, right? Texas wasn't Texas. It was a big state in the 1800s in land mass, but it wasn't the cultural phenomenon that it became after Spindletop. and after the opening of the oil fields, and then after the massive migrations that emptied out the northern states and populated the state to the extent that we see now, where it's, what is it, the second or third most popular? I don't know the exact.
I don't know those. I should know those.
It must be, you got 3 major cities. There's not a lot of states that have 3 major cities. I mean, California is definitely the most populous state. I think New York, because of the city. Has,
the one city.
The one city. Well, Brooklyn's its own city. I'm a former Brooklyner. So,
You've lived all over the place. So Canada, Brooklyn.
Yeah, I've lived in Japan, South Korea, France. I went to school in. So, as a born and raised Quebecer, again, the connection with Texas is that we are just energy rich. So you can get other things wrong in your economy, but if you get the energy right, things are going to be good, right? We can afford to make mistakes in Quebec. Texas can afford to make mistakes because we've got the energy right. And I think what you guys are fighting for is that we never get the energy wrong. Because the things I hear coming out of other governments, while well-intentioned, if you start messing around with energy, like what they did in Germany, celebrating about shutting off nuclear reactors, because it served a performance, And now what do we have today? You know what I found out today? India is the biggest oil exporter now to Germany. How did that happen? Do they drill for oil in India all of a sudden that I never heard about? What happened there? Guess where they're buying that oil from and reselling it?
It's about letting someone else do the things that you're saying. So it is a lot of it is just theater. I mean, you look at. I think I saw something on Twitter where all my wisdom comes from these days, and it talked about Germany. After they shut down the nuclear plant, they were then buying nuclear energy from France. Because they needed the energy. Like you said, it's just so much of it is theater. So when the states are looking at how not to get energy wrong, what does that entail to you, or how does that look?
I think it means, and my strategy, my personal mission that I'm on with Bitcoin, for Bitcoin, around Bitcoin is quite simple. I commend everyone who's trying to put Bitcoin in everyone's pocket. I think that's great, right? What I'm trying to do is literally make the energy companies richer. And the reason I want to make the energy companies richer, no matter what you think about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and all that stuff, it doesn't matter, right? At the end, American energy companies backstopped whatever's going on there. They said, we've got the energy. Now, people can say they shouldn't make money or they should make money off it. They're making a ton of money. Again, don't care about that, right? What I know is that energy companies are the prime drivers now of what's going on in the world. And if you incentivize them the right way, and if you show them how to make more money, there's a potential for Bitcoin to infiltrate the energy industry itself. Now, when people talk about the Bitcoin standard and what that means, look, the US dollar has been the reference rate for energy for years. That's what the petrodollar means. It is the reference rate for energy. Was the only market for energy for very long. Now we hear all these rumors about China and Russia, BRICS. They're going to create a shitcoin to trade against energy. Now, it's incredulous. It will not have the credibility necessary to make our energy systems good. The US dollar is going to continue to go down its political route, right? And for good or bad, it's becoming political money. And by political money, I mean food stamps, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We don't want a country in America where people are malnourished and people are going hungry. We don't want to live in that world, right? There is a world where the government is going to have to help some people, right? I'm an accelerationist, but I don't want to leave anyone in some...
What does accelerationist mean?
Well, it means
double-click on that.
Double-click on that. It means that as a Bitcoiner who has been imagining a Bitcoin standard for 10 years now, and what it means and how we get there, I embraced Donald Trump immediately, politically. But I embraced the other guy even more, right? The Joe Biden. The second Trump was good for one time, but I'm into the new guy even more. Not because he's great. Trump served his own purposes. He flipped reality and opened our minds to changing what it means to be the president, changing what the federal government means. I don't mind if it goes to TV star. That's fine with me. Get out of the way, right? We created the job of president to win World War II. And Obama was the end of that leader of the free world, speaking eloquently in front of crowds and inspiring and motivating people, and this very boomer Woodstock idea of America and spreading freedom and all that stuff, right? So that was one way to look at it. When Trump came around, it opened up everyone's mind that things are changing quick. And now we've got a guy in the White House where if someone says that's the leader of the free world, it's hilarious. Like him or not, it's hilarious to imagine him as the leader of the free world. It's a hilarious title to put on that guy, right? And for those reasons, we're re-architecting what it means to be Washington, D.C. very subtly, you know, even tuning it out for some people and not getting engaged in the saturation of politics is a big advantage. So in the vacuum of that, you've got state sovereignty that can help move, but you've also got the actual energy companies that are now reigning supreme, right? These are massively important entities shaping the planet as we speak. These are energy companies that are jockeying for power and control. Now, I am a fan of American energy companies, right?
Yeah.
Now, they can do a million things. I don't know about the whole story, and I don't care.
Yep.
Right? At this point, it's just none of my business in the sense that I don't have time to figure it all out. What
You're talking about for figuring out for what the energy companies are doing.
Who does good things and who does bad things, and who's the morality of it, let's say, right? The morality behind it. What I know is they're not interested in supporting political money that is being used for political purposes and policy purposes. I'm sure they would be fine paying some taxes to subsidize it, but they're not motivated by adhering to standards about emission, all those other things. So
they're chasing the money.
They're chasing the money, right?
Yep.
So Bitcoin has always harnessed that aspect of how humans actually are, right? Like us or not, there's a way we are, and you have to believe in how humans actually act. You can't just have great
theoretical.
goals.
Wait, you mean theoretical? It's not. We don't run everything off of theory.
Exactly. Yeah. So the great thing that embracing energy companies means is that all we need for a Bitcoin standard to come in the short term, the short term, in a couple of years, a year and a bit, is if the US dollar can no longer be the settlement venue for energy, if the BRICS shitcoin can't also occupy that space because no one has any confidence in the credibility of the issuers here, the clear platform, the clear network for settlement of the energy industry, for storing their wealth, for referencing money is Bitcoin. I often say, the metric system, right, which we don't use in Texas, which is fine. But if people aren't...
My wife and my kids think that that's horrible that we don't use the metric system down here. Do the side tangent. It's way more efficient, but go ahead.
But here's the thing. If people don't know this fact about the metric system, a lot of people don't know this. The metric system is actually derived from the properties of water. Right?
Really?
So,
I did not know this.
This is how it's created. So water boils and freezes, right? So they made the boiling 100. They made the freezing 0, and then water at rest has a volumetric measurement from which we created meters, from which we created kilometers. So it all boils down to the literal properties of water, both the temperature and the length, width, and height. So the reference rate for math and geometry is based on the properties of water because it's constant, it's stable, and it makes sense. Now, what we're dealing with here is imagine you started changing around. Now, actually, water boils at 88 degrees.
Well, I feel it boils at 88 degrees.
Whatever.
My 88 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's already boiled, but that's not water, it's vapor. You're out of, no, not even 88. No, that's lukewarm. You're not getting anywhere. Right?
Yeah.
Right, you're not there. You're not boiling yet at 88.
There's
100.
no framework for us to discuss.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's all Bitcoin needs to be. It needs to be a cognitive reference, a psychological reference for the energy industry. And if it achieves that, we will have a form of hyper-Bitcoinization imminent and in front of us. And Texas is a kind of place, I hear these rumors about Texans exercising their sovereignty, about seigniorage and minting coins. Texas's constitution permits it to, without any disrespect to the banking cartel and the Federal Reserve, they're allowed to issue their own money. And it's got to be gold backed, it's got to be 100% reserved, it can't be a fictional fiat currency.
We have our gold here in Texas.
We know you got your gold.
We took it out of New York and brought it down here. And
well, the brain dead Canadians sold it all because they're so smart and they believe the degrees are worth money.
And Greg Foss will keep screaming.
We love it.
Ranting on Canadians to smarten up.
Again, Quebec, one of those places, it doesn't matter. The water is going to keep flowing. The hydroelectric dams, as long as gravity stays intact, they're good. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Quebec would be one of the last places in the world to suffer any form of critical failure because they got energy right. So they can afford to sell all the gold. It doesn't really matter, right?
There's more energy coming in.
More energy coming in every day, right? There's more than they can use, and we can build more if we need it, right?
Yeah.
There's unlimited capacity, let's say. And we haven't even messed with nuclear reactors in Quebec because we don't need it. But here's the thing. Texas, because they have this energy literacy, and so we got the energy reference rate, right? That's not just for oil and gas. That's not just petrodollar. You can start seeing a decentralized grid come from Bitcoin finance of the grid itself. When you start thinking of a nuclear reactor as a small modular nuclear reactor, one of the engineering limitations of an SMR is that they require base load modulation, because you can't just gauge up a nuclear reactor and gauge it down the way you would other systems, right? With a dam, you've got the ability to stop the flow, increase the flow. You can gauge up and you can gauge down. Nuclear reactor is not that easy, and you need a base load regulator. You need something to take it. So it's much the same reason why we had a prolific building of electrical systems during America's golden age of manufacturing in the early part of the last century, because you had anchor tenants. We all understand that idea of an anchor tenant in a real estate project. You need a grocery store if you're going to build a strip mall. You need these things.
Well, I think that's, people don't understand that if you don't have that regular load, electricity doesn't work.
Exactly.
It changes up the dynamics of it, so then it doesn't flow, and so you have the energy that's being produced, but it's not going to make it there. It's not going to be able to be usable on the other side of it.
Yeah. And Texans have learned that the hard way, right? Texans have learned it through ice storms. They've learned it through hurricanes. They've learned to be energy literate in the same vein that Bitcoiners have learned to be financially literate by understanding these things. And these things are as important and work off each other. And Texas is poised to embrace this new form of finance, to increase the decentralization of the grid. They're poised to create energy markets settled in Bitcoin, which can actually usher in immediately the Bitcoin standard. If you have a venue that's credible, that has a settlement system that is credible, that is going to preserve the wealth of very greedy companies. Let's embrace the greed, right? And they'll have now the opportunity to not get involved in politics. And that's what the separation of state and money look like. It looks like the companies that run energy embracing money that is not tied to the government. And so that's why my sort of short-term path to hyper-Bitcoinization goes directly through the greed.
Just go
of
straight to
energy
incentives.
companies.
Go where the incentives are.
Straight to it. Now, Bitcoin will change everyone's psychology going forward. It's going to change our time preference. It's very Austrian school. But first, we got to get the energy companies. And
the Austrians will win in time.
I believe so. I believe so.
That's great. Yeah, no, we are seeing that here in Texas. That's what we're fighting for on the grid side, is trying to educate some of the legislators. Educate. It really comes down to education. And it is. And you have an older demographic of the population that struggles a little bit with it. They see some of the things like FTX and you hear legislators that will say Bitcoin is like the same, is like Kleenex. It's all of those cryptos together, right? So I think it starts at that level and then it works its way up. And even if they don't understand Bitcoin, they do understand energy and the need to keep energy.
Well, let me even add. I didn't finish the question on accelerationism when we paused and I brought it back because that reminded me of it.
Yep,
so, accelerationism would be the concept that, and I said this the minute FTX happened. This is a good thing. This is a good thing because it forced people again to learn about custody of Bitcoin, about personal responsibility, about self-sovereignty, about being your own bank and what that means, and leverage, and the financial engineering side. That's even the other side of the equation, where Wall Street itself. One of the things we need to change that has to happen. One of the results of Bitcoin, one of the results of decentralization is, I think, the following: fiat currency. That's true in all history. People will go. The most talented are going to go to where they can make the most money. That whatever it is in history, that's what they're going to do. Now, with fiat, what we created as the number one job was financial engineering. right? That's where the best and brightest have gone for a generation. They've moved to Wall Street to be financial engineers and to make Wall Street money because the money was easy, right? So they went to Wall Street, they were financial engineers, and it sort of upped the IQ because they're financial engineering. It ups the IQ necessary to participate, to save money, to be God knows what, right? And this putting Wall Street and bankers and the whole lifestyle of being a Wall Street tycoon and a Wall Street player, it put that on a pedestal. We got to take that down, right? And that's why when these scams go there, I see it as the self-immolation of Wall Street. They're not embracing things like
the curtain
Bitcoin.
comes back and you see the wizard for what it is, just a man behind the curtain.
Yeah. So accelerationism is that idea, right? That we're here to change things, and that doesn't mean it's just, and that's always the problem I've had with, like, say, Ethereum, right? Ethereum has always argued that, well, we just have to make Wall Street one level. They got to be computer science engineers now. We got to add one more
layer to it.
Let's put 10 more IQ points on participation, right? Series 7 license and a Wall Street trading license, okay. Also a computer scientist, now we're talking, right? And that's what forces everyone to sort of fall behind in the system. What we want to see in a Bitcoin standard is the best and brightest going back into making chairs and making things that are good and useful because it's prestigious. We want to see them be farmers again. We want to see them do those things and provide healthy food to their neighbors and to their community. And because there was not long ago in Texas where that was the most honorable thing you could have done, right? Been a rancher, fed your local area, and done those things, right? And I'm not saying it's not honorable now, but it certainly isn't the same fancy category of being a New York banker, right? Now there's a need for banking, there's a need for financiers, all of that is true. What's been going on Wall Street is not exactly that, right? It was something else.
Yeah, there's you take it and there's a bastardization of finance, and you corrupt capital, and you create products that aren't actually solving problems. It's used to create hype or obfuscate issues and risk, and people think that they're going into something that's safe and secure. That's been one of my little personal beefs on the Bitcoin Maxi side, or the Bitcoin Maxis that were massive promoters of centralized finance, BlockFi and Celsius and some of these other ones. It's like you're philosophically, there's philosophical dissonance there, and so it is nice to see that there are people out there that understand that issue. But it is something that you talk about when we get back to energy. That's the big thing that drives everything else. Everything else, the energy. Michael Saylor will go on to his explanation on it, but it's everything derives itself from the energy, whether it's food, whether it's everything else is just a hypothecation of that. Later on further down the chain.
Yeah, and now we're in a position where we can strengthen Texas's electrical grid. We can decentralize it even more, even though it is the most eclectic energy grid.
It really is.
It's
you can look at it and you see like 71% wind at one point, and then it swings all the way down.
It's amazing. Quebec, we got the wind. We don't really have much of the solar. Blessed is Quebec to have the hydro dams. Blessed is Quebec to have LNG if you need it.
Yeah.
But that makes the situation also interesting for Quebecers because they get what they have. They understand the value. I believe the Hydro-Quebec is the largest public utility provider on planet Earth. And these are very sophisticated people running a very sophisticated grid. They're lacking a little bit of the literacy when it comes to understanding the role Bitcoin miners can play because they're not using nearly the capacity they could, but we're going to keep working on that.
Yeah. What? How can states work together, you think? What should states be doing together? What should people be coordinating around to help move the ball forward?
Well, I think when you combine water and energy, in particular small modular nuclear, I saw the last election in Arizona, the midterm elections in Arizona, the 2022 midterm elections in Arizona. A lot of the play for the Senate was about the deal for the Arizona water and whether it went to California or whether it stayed in Arizona, and it was a big deal, and it doesn't matter the parties, we're not here to talk about that.
No.
But what you got to start imagining is possible is that a state like California that has that beautiful coast also has water problems. I can imagine very quickly we're going to have small modular nuclear reactors up and down the coast. Desalination of water is brain dead easy. It's just a filter. You just pump it through a filter, and you start imagining you got a nuclear reactor on the coast. I can easily imagine the water getting pumped up those mountains, getting filtered by gravity, and then coming down right into the other side of the mountains in Arizona, in all of these parched out places. And Texas is primed to be terraformed. I mean, primed to be terraformed. The idea of...
We haven't discussed you're the first person to ever mention terraforming here on the, talking here.
It's primed. You can turn this into the greenest, understanding Texas flows from the green
east side
east to the desert west side, or almost desert, some desert. I guess.
Well, there's a fair amount of desert.
So the sleeper business that no one sees coming. I did a session with Bowtied Bull earlier today. He was talking about Degen Island, and people might think that's a silly idea. This Degen Island, right?
What is?
Degen Island is a place for him and his followers to go and stay away from a collapsing clown world, because they've built this network state, this breakaway state that is the Degens, which is just a fun way, an endearing way to talk about their community, right?
Got it, okay.
To
all
talk
right.
about it. So
it's a Discord channel on...
No,
real...
they're talking about real estate, buying actual real estate.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
You heard Trump in his announcement when he was running about building a Freedom City contest, 10 cities that are built from scratch.
Yeah.
You get El Salvador, again, talking about their new city. You got here in Texas, you have the I think is going to be the blueprint for this, which is Elon Musk building his Freedom City.
I thought that was where you were going to go with
That's
that.
exactly
Yeah.
what I'm saying,
yeah.
right. That's the thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. What he's doing to build Freedom City around SpaceX and the space launch site in Texas for the staff is a prototype of an exportable model that you can actually start implementing all across America. And still you look at the map of America and the people say, oh, all of America's been pioneered. No, it hasn't. The map at night shows the same thing it always has been. East Coast, light up real bright, and it just gets nothing.
On the west, you get to see the stars at night.
You get to see, yeah, exactly. So there's a whole lot of space left. And part of that space is terraformation. I don't know if you know how to turn desert into land, but it's cattle ranching.
Yeah.
Texans knew it before. They used to bring the cows to the line of desert and grass, and the cows merely going from the desert to the grass and back and forth and then pooping terraforms. Weirdly, you wouldn't
over
know.
time
It's
just
that
spreads it
simple.
out. Yeah.
Not even that long. Believe it or not even that long. So there's a formula here where you're building new energy infrastructure, you're building new cities from scratch in places that look inhospitable.
And then new fertile soil.
New fertile soil comes as part of the project. So you can send settlers to the desert in Texas, you give them a small modular nuclear reactor, you give them the food, the cattle ranching and all that, and suddenly you've got the parts that you need to create a brand new city, a brand new settlement, a brand new from scratch, all new. And we're going to learn a lot what's happening in Texas, right? That is an industry that no one sees coming. And Texas is a place that can do this, that can have the appetite to actually go and create brand new cities from scratch that rise out of the desert. And
using the developing technology that's happening, either that's on the energy side, whether it's on the everything that's coming out.
Yeah. Just like the air conditioner itself allowed Texas to grow and steal all that human capital from northern United States, because it became suddenly totally livable here with air conditioning and the ability to manage the temperatures. That's why Texas has had to be so energy literate and so aggressive with energy. This place is not habitable.
It's miserable.
Unless
it's miserable.
you manage the energy.
When like 4 months out of the year, you just don't go outside.
Yeah, because and you have no choice but to manage the energy.
Yeah.
So you manage the energy properly, and even your winters are harsh. It's not an easy winter here, right? It's not. It's better than some places.
It's fantastic, except for the random things that pop up, and then you have 2 weeks where you might as well be in Canada.
Yeah.
So
it's a very harsh environment.
Yep.
And because it's a harsh environment, and as a Quebecer, it's also a harsh environment.
Yeah.
Right. This is extreme cold. I also live in Vermont, but right on the Quebec border. In front of my house this year. So there's the Green Mountains right in front of my place, but the next mountain range behind it is the White Mountains.
Okay.
And they're in the New Hampshire mountains. America's coldest ever recorded temperature, including Alaska, was recorded on that mountain range this year, minus 107 degrees.
Oh my goodness.
It is by far the most dangerous climate on Earth.
That sounds miserable.
It's very bad. I don't live there in the winter.
Okay.
So I get the heck out of there. I go to some really nice, a nice place for
some
the winter
nice places
and chill out,
you just chill out. Yeah,
I can't. I grew up around it, and I know how to make the best of it, and I'm not afraid of it. But it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous. Right? There's all kinds of stories of, what's a hilarious thing in Texas. You had too much to drink and you tripped on your way home. It's over.
Yeah. No,
You're not gonna make it.
Not gonna make it.
Not gonna
Yeah.
make it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Is there anything? So one of the things you talked about before we wrap up, you talked a little bit about kind of the community on a local level. Each state kind of runs their own. They run their own. They run the government the way that they run them. And so, how important do you think it is for people to select the communities that they go to and the states that they're going to?
Yeah, it's jurisdictional arbitrage up and down, all the way down right now. Unfortunately, you wish it wasn't that, but there's so many states making choices that are, people ask what is the definition of woke, for example, right? There's stupid definitions. It's thinking this, it's thinking that. It's none of those things. It's performance.
Woke is performance?
It's just performance. There's no actual
substance to it.
No, I mean, there is no principle, right? There is no hard and
the
fast.
principle is that there is no principle.
Maybe,
which I don't.
Maybe. But look, some of their intentions are honorable. I don't want to denigrate it. I just want to say that it's performance more than it is ideas, and you get a lot of states that are just focused on performance above the most important things.
Yeah.
I mean, Germany is an example. With shutting down the nuclear.
Yep.
New York State is an example, shutting down the nuclear. In New England this winter, I mentioned the minus 107. Well, guess what? They shut down their nuclear. So what do they have to do? Burn oil all day long. They haven't created more greenhouse gases in their recent history than this year, and all because they wanted to perform. Yeah. And so jurisdictional arbitrage is just the most important thing right now. And people just that's something that I do. It's really important to decide which government and which system you're going to support, because there's big implications for the future. Picking the right ones now and giving, let's say, Texas the encouragement by seeing people influx into the state. I mean, look what we saw with a budget surplus in Texas this year and checks getting sent to every single Texan. You know how attractive that is for people getting killed in New York with taxes?
Just slaughtered out there.
Slaughtered.
Yeah.
So, you come to a place where things work and they're not telling you how much energy you can use and when you can use it and all of these things. Again, I'm for people making personal decisions that are good for them and what they think is good for the world. But, the truth of the matter is managing the natural environment, harnessing energy around it, is something that we need to continue to do, and Texas isn't shying away for it for any performance sake. So I think jurisdictional arbitrage is the most important. I think states exercising their sovereignty and understanding it is not a major league and minor league situation. Texas is a nation inside of a country, and for those reasons, it is primed to embrace this. So Texas, I think, it's already there. Other states just have to realize all those ones. That's why I mentioned the flag thing. That's why I like the trend, right? Those ugly state flags that are blue background and then some crest that is unrecognizable and stupid.
Yep.
Right. That thing. You look at the Colorado flag or the California flag. They're gorgeous. My state of Vermont had a beautiful flag in the old days. It was similar to the American flag, except no stripes. That's all just green, and then the square with the stars has some color combination that lets them stick out, and it's a green American flag.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous. Why don't people fly it personally? Because don't forget, my state of Vermont, like Texas, are the only two that have our own constitution. Right? We joined as countries into America, so. We have sovereignty in Vermont in ways, even though it's a Democrat state, that people don't appreciate around, for food, for example. We don't have to ask the FDA, the farmers don't have to ask the federal Department of Agriculture any certifications or permissions if they want to sell directly to customers. We have a constitutional right to buy raw milk from the farmer. Right?
That's a big no-no elsewhere.
I know that.
You're a criminal for buying raw milk.
You know, people talk in this show all the time about provenance of food. I got provenance. The cows in my yard.
All right.
I know where they're coming from. You know what I mean? Like, now I don't raise them. My neighbors raise them. I got a bit of a pasture. You know, I don't spend enough time there to do it, and I only just took possession of the farm recently in the past little while. So, well, it's been over a year, but nevertheless, it's a new thing for me. And I grew up around farms, but I'll go into it slowly. Maybe some chickens first. But luckily, my neighbors do raise cattle, and our environment in Vermont was not really good. The farming was good enough to be industrialized, because it's all valleys, so we couldn't make the big industrial farms. So
when are you exporting and selling in Bitcoin? Is that
not yet. We'll see about that. I don't think they can't. The powers of export of Vermont beef end, because then they have to go through the federal system.
Gotcha.
So you actually got to go there to get them.
Got it. Well, no, thanks for stopping by today. So I think we didn't touch on anything we should need to make sure we touch. The Texas Blockchain Summit. We have all the states. We have the legislators. Hester Pierce, some of the big champions right now in the Bitcoin and the blockchain space and energy space, will be out at the summit in November.
In November, great.
So it'll be out.
When in November?
17th and 18th, I believe.
Okay.
Although I may have that wrong, and if I'm teaming that wrong,
just before Thanksgiving. Perfect.
Just before, it was just before Thanksgiving. The timing is somewhat a little off, but
not bad. You don't want to be working. You don't want to. I've done many events the day after Thanksgiving.
That sounds miserable.
And, you end up being busy over Thanksgiving, which you don't want to do.
Yeah, so you do that, and then also if you've got a company that's building in the space that wants help on the from a regulatory perspective. That's what we're doing. So we've got lobbyists that are trying to help push, help make sure that the legislation goes through is not anti-decentralization and anti-energy. And so we'll say, we're helping the miners, we're helping some of the tech companies advance, and protect against misguided legislation.
And we'll see you guys at Bitcoin 2023.
Bitcoin 2023, yes.
Miami,
you guys got it.
May 18th to 20th.
You were very, very gracious in having us out there, so thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. So,
all
right, it's always a great deal.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We had a great time here at Consensus. At the Texas Blockchain Council, we are striving to be the nexus between traditional industries, banking, finance, legal, energy, and the digital asset industry. So we want to help you get your brand in front of those kinds of companies with B2B opportunities. Reach out to us if that's of interest for membership or for sponsorship at the summit. Hope to see you there in November in Fort Worth. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the summit.